Welcome to Culture Gone Bad, a podcast hosted by Alexandra Saushkina
and Jupi Daura. Join us for a seductive spectacle of cruelties and paradoxes in current events, fashion tragedies, and cultural symbolism.
This show will leave you with lots of ideas, thoughts, contradictions, and self-reflection, which are so much needed in this cruel and mad world. Culture Gone Bad is back, and I almost wish we weren't. Not that I don't enjoy it.
No week could be, in no other week, the name Culture Gone Bad could be more spot on. Indeed. Western civilization gone bad, and the Eastern as well.
Yeah. I remember in the early days when we started our podcast, someone told me, guys, like, you cover topics which are bad, and often, like, what's the point of talking about things which are not nice? And I was like, well, you're missing the point. That's our agenda.
Also, anyway. Why do you need to talk about things that are nice? Nice things you didn't need to understand. You just need to enjoy. Whereas bad things need to be analyzed and understood.
Yeah, I mean, also nothing triggers our brain more than bad things. I think nice things,
indeed,
they just keep us lazy. Oh, well, Jupi, I mean, what can I say? It's all pretty shocking. Like, somehow I feel when I think, and I don't know if I'm even capable to think, I almost want to say, how is it possible? I was thinking maybe I wake up today and it all was a bad dream, or there was some misunderstanding. We now have two major geopolitical conflicts quite close next to each other.
Yeah. Politically, very close. Politically, like, it's... Because I always think politically, it's almost like if everything blows up in Ukraine and everything blows up in Israel, it's the beginning of a third world war. That's what I fear, really. I fear for them anyway, but I fear that this is the beginning of something bigger, because the interests at stake are very, very high for many countries, other than the ones involved. Yeah.
Do you think we ever will be able, as global society, to see eye to eye, or to agree with each other, or like to find some compromise?
No, I don't think that this is. I think that human beings are territorial. The only thing that may unite human beings is if an alien civilization attacks human beings, because there will be another to humanity.
Okay, how about bad bugs? Can we solve the problem?
Oh my gosh. We can. Those are the real aliens. I am terrified. You scared me. Bed bugs did not exist in my life before you introduced them to me. I mean, not physically, in terms of knowledge. I knew about that. I knew they existed, but I never thought of them as a possibility. And then when you told me your experience with bed bugs, I started being terrified. And now I am simply living in expecting them to happen, to take over my bed, even though I don't have them, but I am terrified. Look at my cap. Look at my cap.
Yeah, very, very gothic. Very suitable for today.
Exactly, very suitable for today.
I mean, look, this is like the invasion no one wants in their bed, ironically, in the age of loneliness in which we live.
Imagine
bed bugs are here to keep you company forever.
Exactly. You'll
never be alone.
Yes.
Oh my God. But Jupi, I think very few people actually know how close you are to Jewish community in London. And I think it would be very interesting if you share, like, what's happening, with people who are not in these areas which have military actions happening. Yeah. But like, I think like the big thing which actually shocks me, and I think you'll give more insight on that, is that actually a lot of people support the events and they support Hamas, and there's a huge antisemitism which is growing.
Yeah. Yeah, huge. And I am seeing it, even though I am not Jewish myself. I'm not Jewish. Probably some of my ancestors may have been, because I found out that the region where I come from in Italy was inhabited by several Jewish communities. But then, because it was part of the Spanish kingdom, they were forced to convert to Christianity. And then somebody wrote a book tracing the surnames in my region, and both my father and my mother's surnames apparently belong to, communities that in the 15 and 16th centuries used to be Sephardi Jews. So there must be something in my bloodline, but I am not. I am not Jewish. I didn't grow up Jewish. I grew up Catholic, even though I don't believe in any God today. However, I think I am well integrated into the Jewish community in England, because I know many Jewish people, some of which are also Israeli, and I also have dear friends who are Orthodox Jews. So as soon as the conflict, not the conflict, as soon as the terroristic attack of Hamas struck, I immediately contacted my friends to say I'm very sorry, especially because one of my friends I knew he had to go somewhere, because I met with him the week before, but I didn't know that he was where he was. I couldn't remember whether he was going to Israel and his family lives in a kibbutz or somewhere else. And I noticed that he did not reply to me straight away, because when on WhatsApp you can see that the other person receives the
stalking culture.
The message. Exactly. And he was not receiving my message, so I panicked a little bit, because it was the day of the attacks, and then eventually the morning I even panicked. I even tried to find his family on Instagram. His family lives in Australia, just to see if I could reach out to his brother, and his brother was not posting anything else than something very general, not something specific about his brother. So I come down, and then the day after, and I thought, okay, I'll not get in contact now, but if by tomorrow I don't get any news, then I'll contact his brother, who doesn't know me at all, so imagine. And then he contacted me, and he told me that he was fine, and actually he didn't receive my message because he was flying to America, which is every year he goes to Israel. This year he went to America, and that probably saved his life. I don't know. Anyway, other than that, my psychoanalytic training, my psychotherapy training is inside a Jewish center, a synagogue, and a Jewish center in North London. Now, what struck me this week is the lack of empathy with the Jewish community in London. They didn't do anything. They lost some family members, and they didn't do anything so to deserve this. And nobody, and several people told me that nobody reached out to them. Nobody. So my friend was so let down by people he considered friends, and didn't even ask. He told me I was the only Gentile who bothered to ask. And even a student, we have many Israeli students. I asked a girl how she was. She was obviously destroyed, and she was even contemplating quitting university and going to fight for her country, because that both boys and girls in Israel go to do military service. And she also told me exactly the same thing. She said, people don't even know. You are the first person to ask me how I am, and that was very strange to me. And then what struck me, and I want to know what your point of view is that the protests in the streets in support of Palestine began straight away. And my feeling is that those were not protests in favor of Palestine. People were not somehow supporting Palestine. They were supporting Hamas. They were supporting a terroristic organization. And the reason why I think this is because they did not protest. They did not wait for Israel to counterattack. As soon as there was a terroristic attack by Hamas, everybody sided with Hamas. Like, everybody went to protest in the streets. They didn't even wait for it to be an attack on Palestine. Do you understand what I mean? They immediately supported Hamas. I mean, that what it seemed to me, that it was considered almost a legitimate action. The terroristic attack was seen by some people in the West as an act of resistance. And I think just as it happened for the Ukrainian war, I think the reason why so many Westerners join in, forgive somehow Hamas for what it did, masking it as a support for Palestine, and I'll get to this in a minute if you want, but people kind of are so one-sided, so coy in offering support to the Jewish community, and so ready to show support, I think, for actions like this, or for, without saying it clearly, but supporting Hamas, because what they really are saying, what they really are against is not so much Israel as much as they are against the United States. So Israel is seen as, the United States in a branch of the United States in the Middle East. And this to me seems like a deja vu, because last summer I was surrounded by a lot of friends and their friends, and a lot of them happened to be intellectuals of the left. And a lot of them defended Putin against Ukraine and thought that Ukraine should be defeated. And what I got from it is not that they were against Ukraine. What I got from it is that they were against the United States, who is with Ukraine. Does it make sense? So they are likely, it's a very predictable position. They stand wherever America is not. So that's my feeling. So I'm talking about the West now, not so much the conflict there.
No, that's an interesting point, but why everyone is so against America? I think is it because it's so powerful?
No, yes, in countries outside of the West, I think it's because America is the one powerful force until China takes over, that is. But I think the reason why Westerners are against America is much more basic and much more simple. We in the West lost respect for the West. We lost respect for
we hate ourselves. That's
exactly. Precisely. I think that's it. We hate ourselves. We hate our institution. We enjoy democracy because we have it, but we don't consider it something that we should guard and respect. So the one achievement of the West, democracy, which by the way, Israel is the only democracy. It can be criticized. I do not like Netanyahu as a president. I did not like Netanyahu before these attacks. And the reason why I don't like Netanyahu is the same reason why I don't like non-democratic states, is because he wanted to change the legal system in Israel to weaken it. So mine is not a blind defense. And I've been to Palestine. I've passed through Palestine. I see that in Transjordan, not Gaza. And I saw how terrible their condition is. So I do sympathize with Palestinians as well in that sense. I think they deserve better than they have. But the two states are incomparable. One is democratic, the other one is not. And so I do think that Palestinians need more respect as well. Don't get me wrong. But this is a different story. This is a battle against terrorism, not against Palestinians who are not terrorists.
The whole Gaza Strip is very problematic because, first of all, people who live there, they do not really have, I understand, documents, like travel documents. They can't really travel. Yeah. I think it's also very problematic with work. And while I was doing research about this whole conflict, something I found out, apparently a lot of people who live in Gaza Strip, they receive education like from Soviets, which is also quite, I think.
Also, I think I was reading somewhere that there is a university in Gaza that you can only go to universities if you support Hamas. And a lot of things you can only do if you support Hamas. So it's really ingrained in society. Yeah.
Well, I mean, sounds very, very totalitarian.
Yeah.
Well, The thing is, I mean, difficult to say because I think your theory is very interesting, and there's definitely a very difficult relationship that's developed with its own past. We almost, the agenda today is almost to say everything we did in the past was a result of colonialism, our
Yeah.
aggression, marginalization of other, and we are so bad, and now we have to decolonize, we have to rebuild, but we do not say, "But look, like part of any history, if it's very difficult to look at it as a country, why don't we look as individual, right? Like we all human beings, we grow up, we go to school. We do not start school with getting A's in every subject. We fail a lot, and that's how we learn. We also will have argument, we will get detention, maybe we will get kicked out. Like, we will not make friends with every single person we will meet. And this is the reality of life. We will not always be right. We sometimes will make big mistakes, and also we will make friends and enemies. Like it's how life goes. But for some reason we developed an expectation when it comes to national history. It has to be very morally pure, and how it can be achieved by people who are not morally pure. I think that's very fascinating development, and it's affecting everything. Like all businesses, culture sectors, even charities, everyone is pursuing this agenda. But on the same time, we also love to develop common enemy. And common enemy is always someone who we all can find a reason to hate. And for some reason, Jewish community has been this enemy for very, I guess, odd reasons. But also, I think the Arab community is huge, right? And the
Yeah.
reality of it is, fortunately, in the West, the idea of having children is dying out. Like less people are getting children, and moreover, less, let's say, educated, successful people are having children. So it actually means in the West, we just have less population. So when actually Arab community at the same time of us, it's growing. And, I think average Arab family, I don't know statistics, but we might have like, I don't know, 4 children or so.
Yeah. Many more.
So
Yeah.
when we might be getting close to zero children as an our average standard. So I think it's a combination of many things, the majority who supports this narrative, but also our problematic past. And at the same time, even before this attack happened, there are a lot of issues happening. I think we are very frustrated with our politicians. We are very frustrated with state of economy. And I think a lot of young people do not see their future, like what we will do with our lives. I think the idea of linear career is disappearing. Everyone had a moment of dream to become influencer and online celebrity, which also seems to be dying, and social media is in crisis. And now you are being offered a solution to think about an enemy whom we can blame for everything. It's very comforting narrative.
So you raised three great points that I want to give you my reading. My reading. So the last thing you said is modern kids not seeing the future, which is absolutely true. I think it's very difficult to see the future if you don't believe that your country produces anything good. So if you don't believe in your country, if you are an American who thinks that America is the worst country in the world, obviously how can you build something valuable if you don't have faith in your own country? If you are a Brit, I mean, I keep meeting British people denigrating Britain as if they have something to be forgiven for if they're British. And chill down. I mean, your country did, yes, there was an empire, yes, they did some bad things, but I mean, also great things come from Britain. Be aware of both, not just the flaws, don't lose faith in your country, work to improve it, don't lose faith in your country, and very often I am the one cheering up or or being the cheerleader for Britain, because everybody committed terrible sins. Okay, everybody committed sins. The point is that you identify with the good sides of your country, not with everything that your country did in the past. So that's how you improve, right? And we lost that. So this is the first thing that I think you said that really.
No, but I'll come back to that. Like, look, you and I, we are very easy to counterattack with that because we both are immigrants who left countries in which we were born.
Yeah.
And now let's say we support country, which is not our original country. Well, here we go. This is a solution. If you think there's something wrong with a country in which you reside, why don't you find another place which you think got it right? Because surely something must exist which aligns with your values.
Exactly. That's a very good point. And I am
especially with British passport, it's very easy to
go.
Very
like easy, yes.
Yeah, like you're not in Gaza Strip, so.
And also I see this from some third generation British people who almost like if they have another ancestry behind, they always align with the other ancestry rather than Britain. And I mean, do recognize that you do live in a great country. The majority of people who go somewhere come here, don't go to most other countries in the world. So I think people should work towards bettering their country as opposed to being obsessed with the past mistakes of their country. That is a much more productive because it's not your sense of guilt is not going to change the past. Okay, and that's one thing. The second thing you mentioned is the Arabs. Now, the fact that Arabs protest against Israel, I understand more than the Western people who protest against Israel. And the funny thing, though, and this is something that is very easily testable. Everybody is siding with Palestine in the Middle East, but very few countries, no country is ready to take civilians from Gaza. Okay, Egypt has a border with Gaza. Egypt closed the border. They don't want to hear about Gaza. Civilians, and that struck me. Everybody's saying that Israel is not protecting. Israel is not taking the civilians from Gaza to protect them, which is absolutely true. And I think Israel should at least take some civilians from Gaza to save them. However, nobody's mentioning the fact that Egypt is not doing it and the neighboring countries are not doing it. So it's too easy to point the finger and then to pretend you can't do anything, right? So nobody, I don't hear this argument nobody's against Egypt for not saving. Egypt is doing towards the civilians in Gaza the same thing that Israel is doing, not in terms of attacks, in terms of not trying to save them. So, and that is disgraceful because those poor civilians need some help from somewhere. So neighboring countries, I don't see them helping. So there is an Arab solidarity towards them up to the point at which they can actually actively save their lives. And then you mentioned something about Jewish hate, and it reminded me that Douglas Murray, who is a great British intellectual, one of those very uncomfortable intellectuals because he's brilliant in terms of how he speaks and his culture, but he's also conservative, so very uncomfortable. And Douglas Murray once said that the hate toward Jews in Europe is very, very unique and very peculiar because whereas for instance, take racism in America towards, let's say, Black people. Racism in America was based on the idea of Black people are inferior. Okay, that was the underlying motive for racism. Racism, wherever you see racism, usually is I am racist because I believe that race is inferior. That is usually the argument, but the anti-Semitism is very different because you have two competing ideas. On the one hand, Jews are inferior. on the other hand, Jews are superior, and therefore I hate them for their superiority. Okay, they always score, Ashkenazi Jews always score higher in IQ tests. Jews are richer than others. The arguments during Nazism, for instance, or generally speaking in Europe, anti-Semitism was always moved. There was always these two competing ideas. On the one hand, they are inferior. On the other hand, I envy them because they are superior and they are, I don't know, smarter and richer, etc. So it's a very unique type of racism, anti-Semitism, because it's twisted, and also it's more difficult to fight because there is always that envy element that makes it difficult to fight. So I think that's the reason why today people are not as ready to recognize anti-Semitism as they are to recognize other types of racism. Does it make sense?
Yeah, no, it's you are right. Like it's a point, but it's still quite crazy to think about all this happening in 2023. Something which bothers me a lot. It's been nearly 100 years since Nazi regime in Germany,
Yeah.
and we seem to not be learning the lessons. I wonder, is it because we're trying to erase history, or are we trying to rewrite history? But why we do not learn? Because I feel like what it's going to lead to, it will polarize people even more. And I think we are going to develop mentality, us versus them, even in a more extreme level, especially like in different Western countries, the UK, for example.
Yeah, I think that the anti-Semitism of the Nazis was only the loudest, but the reason why it's so difficult to fight against anti-Semitism is because there is a line of anti-Semitism that predates the Nazis, unfortunately, and it's very simple. Jews arrived in Italy before Christians did. Okay, many people don't realize that, but Jews are in Rome. The Jewish population is in Rome. Is older than the Catholic population, the Christian population, because it's since the Roman Empire. Not much before the Christians, but slightly before the Christians. And since that very moment, the Romans hated them. Now, the Romans were very welcoming with any religion. There were absolutely no racism as we understand it today did not exist for the Romans. For them, you were either a Roman or you were not. So there was no idea of race. You could be of any color, any religion, as long as you were a Roman citizen, right? They didn't have the standards that we have today. The thing with Jews, though, is that because of how the religion is structured, they did not recognize they refused to worship the Roman emperor as a god. So that's the reason why they were not liked at the time. So it's not because they were different, it's just because they refused to recognize the Roman emperor as a god himself. And then when the Christians came, they became the ones who killed Jesus. So we will discriminate them because they hate Jesus, and they stayed, right? And then you had the terrible things that the Spanish kings did to them, who forced them to convert. And weirdly, at the time when the Spanish were chasing Jews and forcing them to convert, and after they converted, still chasing them, the salvation for Jews, surprise, surprise, was the Turkish Empire. The empire that was welcoming Jews at the time was not the Christian states, but was the Turkish Empire. So what I'm trying to make, in France, there is a very famous case that Proust writes about in the Recherche, which is very famous. It's the case of Dreyfus, a general of the French army who was considered to have betrayed the country only because he was Jew. So what I'm trying to say is that if you trace the history, Nazism is not the only example. It's just the loudest. So how can you really change something that is so ingrained in society? And also there is another thing. Jews were not, victims in the sense that they were victims, but they did not behave as victims. that's how they survived for 2,000 years in Europe, by working and trying to make their communities work. So they were not like sitting and crying or allowing other people to, to simply, they still made, they still came to things.
Well,
So
this
I
is
think
what probably makes it hating them even
exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
I think something which also bothers me is how the conflict, the attack started. And these people having a rave just outside of Gaza border makes me want to ask, like, who allowed this to happen so close to the border? Always like gruesome stories of young women being dragged down the cars, raped, killed, beaten up. And I can only like imagine, like in the surrealism of all this is the fact that, I mean, whoever has been to a rave will understand these people were probably highly intoxicated.
Of course.
They probably didn't even understand what was happening. We thought it was part of a rave.
Yeah. Also, I've been there. I've been to that area, which is the Negev.
What are you going to say? You've been to that rave?
No, not to that rave. No, to the area, to the middle of the country where you have this desert. It's called the Negev Desert. Now, the fact is that Israel is a very contradictory country. I don't know when the conflict ends. If you have you been to Israel?
No,
you have been everywhere in the world. You traveled more than most people I know.
I think, ironically, I think this is the reputation I have, but not that much. I have my favorite places and I go to them, but I don't think I'm the one who always tries new things. I think it's a very wrong idea. Like, on the surface, it looks like I've traveled that much, but I don't think I had.
Right. Okay. So when this conflict ends, you must go to Israel. Okay. It's not, you must. It's one of the most beautiful. I love the Middle East, generally speaking. I love going to Middle Eastern countries, but Israel is really beautiful, and not only in terms of nature, but also in terms of history. The only other place where I had that sense of overwhelming richness in terms of both nature and history is Egypt. There's so much beauty in Israel from every side, right? I mean, besides Italy, that is. Yeah, but so beautiful. And you see that, and then and Israel is also a very Americanized. Tel Aviv is very, skyscrapers, and even I've been to the city in the middle of Israel, Beersheba, which is also very, very modern and very, and then even Jerusalem it's just fantastic. The Christian sites in Jerusalem, the Muslim sites in Jerusalem, and the Jewish sites in Jerusalem are fantastic, and they are very close to each other. And that is probably, I think, the reason why this dispute is so difficult to solve. Because how are you gonna, if you were to create two states, how are you gonna divide Jerusalem? Who is ready to give up Jerusalem? The Palestinians or the Israelis? It's very, very difficult. I don't have an answer. Nobody has an answer to this. It's so difficult. It's one of the many problems. Anyway, and then you go to the Palestinian territories, and they are not as happy. They live in a very sad situation, all next to each other, and you don't have the air to breathe. Basically, it's really terrible. Also, Israel has a reputation for being the country with the most powerful intelligence in the world. Okay, even more powerful than the United States. And when I got to Israel, in the airport, they stopped me like 3 times. Okay, asking questions: who are you? Why are you here? Etc. So they have a very powerful intelligence, and apparently the reason why this massacre happened is because they were thinking in terms of technology and intelligence, but the attacks were made with non-technologic means. So they had no way to tracking them. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
The intelligence simply...
Yeah, this is exactly like this conflict, this beginning, like you say, the advance which has been achieved by Israel, the high-tech high rises, the desperate poverty of Palestine, and this conflict and this race in the middle, I think it has this dystopian reality, which we often see in horror or disaster sci-fi films. And it really, I think no one gets it more on point than one of my favorite artists, Jon Rafman. And his videos, one video which was screened last year, and it's one of his recent ones, called Main Daemon. It's about America, which is very futuristic. And essentially, it just highlights extreme richness, high-tech development, and how it all can be taken over by this brutality and poverty. You do not need much, and how little human value has in all these relationships, and how we almost live in Middle Ages while we have all this high tech. And this intersection of these two, and at the same time, people always indulging in partying and enjoying themselves too much. It always is shown in as a backdrop of everything, all the conflicts and all the brutality which is happening. And majority of it is taking place in prison in America. And I think this is particularly interesting because it sort of highlights the control of prison, and prison is, it's the most controlled thing ever. Think about, the concept of panopticon, right? And at the same time, we all know prisons are the places where crime is very high. We always manage to smuggle drugs. There is a lot of abuse. And often actual people who work there were a big part of all the schemes, of all the illegal actions which are happening in prisons. And this conflict, in a way, in a very sad way, it's a perfect situation depiction of what we often see in these dystopian narratives. We always think it's just something to titillate our senses, but will never happen. And what happened just proves it wrong. What is unraveling in front of our world today, in front of us, it's actual dystopia, which we often watch and see in popular culture. And what really bothers me, how did we manage to achieve all this? And the backdrop of us talking about, artificial intelligence got so advanced, it's going to, take us to progress, going to change our lives. We are progressing in so many fields, we're getting more and more advanced. But at the same time, it's very sad and pathetic. We are being taken over by brutal military fanatics and bad bugs. It's pathetic.
I think you said everything.
Yeah, it all feels very disturbing about how all these things, which are usually used as sources of extreme entertainment, almost like video games, it all seems to be becoming reality.
Yeah, I think you said it. We live in dystopia. Dystopia is not an imagine. Unfortunately, the problem between utopia, the problem with utopia and dystopia is that utopia is simply not possible, whereas dystopia is actually around the corner every time. So and you're right, this conflict with this very even the discrepancy between the very powerful Israeli technological means, and the very poor means that Hamas has, and generally speaking, the Palestinian, but Hamas has. Even this is dystopian, because you have almost this contradiction between great means. They can attack from each side, and they're the ones who are trying to attack with using humans as a shield because they don't have much more to fight with. The disproportion is huge. I always think about that phrase, I think it was Einstein, I don't remember, who said that I don't know with which weapons the Third World War will be fought, but I do know the weapons that will be used for the Fourth World War, sticks and stones, right? Because because humanity will be and technology, everything will be destroyed, and people will end up using just sticks and stones. And I think to some extent we have, the means of both right now at the present. So
It's
yeah,
crazy. It's crazy how much we, own the technology and how carelessly we destroy everything. Why we
yeah,
have this way? Well, on a different note, it's a big cultural week in London because of a Frieze Art Fair, and honestly, feels very wrong. Feels very wrong to enjoy any art or experience any art with all these events. I think it feels very, I don't know, difficult to do anything because I think there is a lingering sense of danger and anxiety. But nevertheless, we have to carry on and we have to do things before people with sticks and stones get to us, while we can enjoy some modernity and high tech. So this year is actually 20th anniversary of Frieze Art Fair, and it felt very grandiose. It really streamlined event, and it's very well organized. Have to give credit considering the service industry is disappearing, and to organize and have anything running is impossible in the Western world. I think we're really failing in this regard. It's great to see such well organized event. Having said that, it felt very precarious because event takes in the middle of Regent's Park, and the whole Regent's Park was surrounded by surveillance helicopters. So already it gives it a very different edge compared to what this event usually is. It's a commercial event, right? So art for sale for private collectors, for connoisseurs and industry experts. And what I noticed this year, maybe similar to Fashion Week, no digital, just very, very few digital art pieces. And same with fashion. I think fashion is not embracing technology as much as everyone was saying. And this is very interesting.
When you say digital, sorry, just to understand, when you say digital, you mean machines in it or metaverse, like, for instance, the NFTs?
Both. I think like everything to do with advanced technologies, even but even multimedia, like even like video art, very little. Like most of things I saw were paintings, sculpture, and installation, which compared to previous years, we didn't even have any neon art. And usually, you always, like there was one Seraphim Evans, and that's all. Like literally very, very little technology. And I remember in the past, well, much more. And maybe we're playing it safe. And I think there's a big focus on minimalism, and especially I think we have many Korean artists represented both by Korean galleries and international galleries, both like also London galleries and European galleries. I think a lot of this art is taking it back to basics, and it's it's this contemplative art. It's very minimal, like Park Cebu, with lines and very toned down palette, or Liu Fan. And I actually saw it in, international galleries, surprisingly, which very reminded me of Free Soul. So maybe we also have some sort of relationship agenda. Nevertheless, the winners of booths this year were a bit of a surprise to me. Well, surprise because one gallery which won, I don't remember the name at this point, but the focus was on the artists who explored very personal reflection on like growing up and what the artist experienced in the childhood, like like there was a display showing CDs and music to which artists listened when growing up, which I think it's very difficult to, I don't know, relate to somehow if it's someone's personal experience. And the second booth, which one was from Mumbai, and it was dedicated to representing female artists from South. So not necessarily the most well-known, but also I would say very abstract art. So collage or painting, non-figurative. So it's quite interesting. And actually in Frieze Masters, which is more established artist sections, we actually decided to dedicate half of it to women artists, and there was a lot of focus on lesser known women artists throughout 20th century.
Such as any notable names?
Any notable names? Oh, you know what? I think most of them are very like I'm not, not
They were not. They're really rediscovered.
Yes, I think like this is
right.
I don't think I didn't see many female artists which I'm fully familiar with. Maybe some of them I like briefly saw work, but it wasn't someone like, like I don't know, Anni Albers, for example, who at least has a reputation. Nothing like that. I think all of them were very, also a lot of global female artists. So not necessarily global West, more like global South.
Oh, I see. Yeah. While you're speaking, it reminded me two things. One is that it really aligns with a general mood that we see today, a general trend towards minimalism, not just in art, but also we have seen it in fashion as well, to the point of dullness in fashion. So I'm happy that that art was not as dull in its minimalistic take. The other though is that I attempt an interpretation. I haven't been to Frieze because I am just too too tired and too stressed this year because I've got too much going on in my life. But I thought that this moment of decline of digital and technology was upcoming. I thought since last year, and that is because especially the NFTs were like a bomb waiting to explode. The NFTs are a perfect a perfect formula for a economic bubble, for a financial bubble. Yeah, exactly. So the prices were raising so fast and so high that at some point, just as it happened with the tulips in Holland in the 17th century, or as it happened with the housing market, or with the web bubble in the late 90s. So it was obvious that at some point that growth was too fast and too unjustified. And then when NFTs started losing their value on the market, I think that's the moment in which people realize that investing in something that is not digital is not necessarily, I mean, the fact that is new doesn't make it better. So I think in fashion, people are shying away from it because in times of uncertainty, you look at things that are less volatile and more secure.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, especially with investments and a lot of
investment. Exactly. Yeah.
I'm going to mention two artists because you asked me and I now check my Frieze notes. So I think the most well-known artist in the female section would be Finn-Kelcey, the photographer, and her very well-known image is that woman upside down with her skirt, like the pleated skirt sort of tilted a little bit.
Okay.
No, doesn't ring. Well,
no,
like I told you, like a lot of these names you do not like necessarily see. And the other one who I thought was, at least to me, this artist stood out, but she is Korean, Kangja Jung, and she is a performance artist in 60s. And I think it's a big provocation in Korean society. And, she again, not extreme, but she would experiment a lot with materials, and she would engage with like soft and hard textures and sort of perform with them. Again, like this is what I say, a lot of focus on Korea, but I think because we're trying to promote, because it's a new edition in the cities of Frieze. So that was interesting. But everyone else, these are very underrepresented female artists. So for me, a lot of new names and a lot of discoveries, but also I wouldn't say what most of them stayed with me. However, I'm going to mention one artist who I think everyone should absolutely check out. And I think this is my biggest discovery at Frieze. So the artist is Kara Chin.
Kara Chin, from where?
She was born in Singapore. She now lives in Newcastle.
Okay. Carotene from Newcastle. We are here for you, Carotene from Newcastle. Why does Newcastle make people laugh? If you said Singapore, nobody would have laughed. Why this lack of respect for Newcastle?
I just don't know. I don't know, like what makes people move from Singapore.
She's a Geordie.
Anyway, Drippy. So I was absolutely amazed with her work, and I will try to show you just so you can see. But basically, so this work she does, this is not painting. This is actually ceramics.
Oh.
And she adds all these layers, and it looks basically like some sort of so here you can see these cups, and they're surrounded by little fires. And you see the corner ones, the ones which are like around, they are actually like little ceramic fires, and like they are 3D, so they're like actually attached.
Right. So she makes this is like a mosaic of ceramics, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And this is like really incredible because she does like different scale, like, you know, this is what she also does, like with a
beautiful.
Oh, sorry, this is the previous artist I was mentioning. Like this is, but her research is basically so she looks at different dystopian sci-fi or just disaster movies, and through these works what she's trying to achieve is to show the sense of anxiety and desperation which people often experience, and
I
how
think we have a cover for this episode.
we do indeed. And this is what she does. She like shows with little fires as symbols of our desperation, and it's all ceramics.
I think personally, it's a constant in female artists in the 20th century, is that female artists have one of the things that they have brought into art, I think, is that they revolutionized, and this is general with female artists. They revolutionized the materials and the medium, the media within art. So it is true that you don't have a lot of female artists who are painters or especially sculptors, because they prefer other means. Obviously you do have them, but not as many. But then they should be credited, female artists, for having pushed the boundaries of performance art, of installations. I'm thinking about Rebecca Horn. Okay, just not to mention once again our beloved Marina Abramovic, but Rebecca Horn in the 20th century. And also taking materials that were considered crafty and making art with them, such as knit, such as
Anni Albers, tapestries.
Exactly, tapestries and ceramics, everything that was not considered to belong fully within art. Female artists in the 20th century and 21st century have kind of pulled it into art, showing that art is about a concept that uses, and this is the idea of Arthur Danto, art is an embodied concept, is a concept that uses a mean to be conveyed, so they change the mean to express new concepts. And that, I think, is the thing that strikes me the most about most female artists in the 20th, the greatest contributions, I would say, that they found new languages within art.
Yeah, and I'm actually going to show you a very prominent example. So this is an artist from Middle East, Sarah Abu Abdallah, and what she does, she creates this very weird tapestries. They are massive. They are size of a human body, and it shows like contemporary Arab society, like, you know, both like people on the streets and social media, but the way they are displayed, it has, you know, the social media style irony, and it's very contemporary.
But is it a picture, or is it?
No, it's actually tapestry. It's woven. It's woven tapestry, and I think I found this to be incredible. They like really were stopping people in their tracks as they were passing the booth. I thought it was incredible.
I mean, think about also Mona Hatoum, who is also from the Middle East.
Yeah,
and Mona Hatoum does the same thing. She takes things that belong to the kitchen, belong in the kitchen, and which is stereotypically considered the domain of females and women, and she takes it out and she brings it into a domain that for so many centuries has been considered the preserve of man art, and she creates menacing things with those otherwise comfortable kitchen objects, and I think she's also brilliant in that.
Well, I mean, at least there are some things to look forward to. Maybe a female artist one. Maybe they will save our world, huh?
I'm afraid we are entering a phase in which even female artists belong to the past, and now it's all about
Lizard man.
non-binaries, lizard man, actually a lizard trans woman,
Oh my God,
or
Jupe,
the the Korean guy who started identifying with a Korean woman. So the British guy who identified as a Korean woman.
Well, Jupe, you are a fan of Freud, and you probably know a lot about his psychoanalysis techniques. So I had a dream, and in this dream, London was full of delivery drivers on bicycle. They didn't have a nose. They had lizard face, and they were all covered in scars.
I think it's my fault because I showed you that picture of that man.
So I woke up in the middle of the night thinking, this is the London of future. Lizard man as delivery.
I mean, Alexander, what can I say? Your dreams reflect what I think your dreams would be like. Like that's a dream that if I had that dream, I would think, why am I dreaming Alexandra's dreams, right?
Really?
Yes, it's your stuff.
All right. Well, I mean, I think I just offered a very attractive perspective for Lizard Man. So if Lizard Man is still considering career opportunities, I think Deliveroo will be. He can become the next face of, oh, what is it? Uber Eats or Deliveroo? Snoop Dogg used to be face or just it. Well, that's it. Like Lizard Man can become a new face. I think will be very contemporary with our times.
Yeah. I think you've got a great marketing idea. Well.
I mean, look, I think as human beings, we feel very sad about what's happening. And it's awful for Israel. I also think Palestinian society and how people live in Gaza Strip is also not right.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was absolutely. I want to make this very clear. I think that Palestinians also need attention and help. I was just talking against terroristic attacks from Hamas, not the Palestinian civilians have no fault about.
But I feel in the days and weeks to come, Culture Gone Bad will have lots of things to talk about. And this is a positive thing.
For us, yes.
So until next
time.
So
cynical. Until next time.
Culture Gone Bad.
Regardless of how much you loved or hated this episode, now you absolutely must subscribe and leave us a comment and give us a like.
Because remember, love and hate are just one step away from each other. Until next time, Culture Gone Bad says goodbye.